A young boy disappeared from a bus stop one ordinary day, leaving a family's world shattered. And then, 13 years later, a single photo in a charity magazine reopens the case, uncovering secrets that no one could have imagined. Before we begin, please share where you're watching from in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Now, let's get started with this unforgettable story. On a cool autumn morning in a sleepy town nestled deep within Kentucky, the air carried a faint chill, and the rustling leaves danced their last before winter's grip. At the corner of Maple Street, where sidewalks met and children waited for their school buses, stood 8-year-old Jacob Whitmore, his small frame wrapped in a thick jacket, clutching his worn backpack like a lifeline. Jacob's bright blue eyes scanned the approaching road, anticipation lighting up his face. For years, this bus stop had been a comforting routine, his gateway to school, friends, and the ordinary days of childhood. But on this particular morning, routine shattered into silence. When a yellow bus finally rounded the bend, it did not find Jacob waiting. His place was empty. His mother, Laura, was already late, rushing out the front door of their modest 2-story house. When she reached the bus stop, her heart sank. "Jacob," she called, voice trembling, hope flickering briefly before sinking into dread. The morning light seemed colder now, shadows lengthening with every unanswered cry. Panic blossomed quickly, spreading like wildfire through neighbors and friends who gathered to search the quiet streets. The police arrived swiftly, their calm voices attempting to steady the frantic energy. But inside, Laura felt a storm of terror and disbelief. How could her son simply vanish? Flyers went up by afternoon. Jacob's smiling face captured in a school photo, frozen in time, staring out with innocent eyes that contradicted the nightmare unfolding. Laura clung to every hope, every lead, no matter how faint. Days blurred into restless nights as the search expanded beyond the town limits. Volunteers combed through woods, empty lots, and forgotten pathways, but Jacob remained elusive, a ghost slipping through their fingers. The bus stop, once a symbol of safety and predictability, transformed into a haunting emblem of loss, a place where laughter was replaced by whispers and grief. Neighbors whispered theories. Some said Jacob might have wandered off, lost in thought, while others feared the worst, that someone had taken him. The local sheriff's office poured resources into the investigation, yet no concrete evidence surfaced. Rumors stirred unease. Strangers passing through town drew wary looks. Laura's world shrank, confined to memories of her son's gentle laugh and the countless "I love you"s exchange before school. She refused to leave the bus stop, returning daily, hoping to see him waiting again. The town rallied around her, offering food, comfort, and prayers, but their faces mirrored her helplessness. The media picked up the story, broadcasting Jacob's disappearance across state lines, sparking nationwide sympathy. Yet, as weeks turned into months, the relentless passage of time carved deep scars into Laura's soul. Her husband, Tom, withdrew into silence, unable to bear the weight of uncertainty. Friends grew distant, unsure how to comfort someone trapped in endless waiting. But Laura's resolve hardened. No matter the years, she would search, remember, and fight for her boy. On the first anniversary, she lit candles at the bus stop, their flickering flames a fragile beacon of hope in the dark. Tears streaked down her cheeks as she spoke softly, promising to keep Jacob's memory alive. Each year thereafter, she organized vigils and charity events, transforming her grief into purpose. The community, once silent and somber, now stood united in remembrance and determination. For Laura, the bus stop was no longer just a place. It was a testament to love's endurance against despair. Even as her hair silvered and wrinkles deepened, Laura's heart remained anchored to that morning. She carried Jacob's photo everywhere, tucked safely in her wallet and pinned to her coat. The boy who vanished from the bus stop was never forgotten. His absence echoed in every quiet moment and every whispered prayer. Though the world moved on, Laura's search never ceased, fueled by an unbreakable bond between mother and child. This was not just a story of loss. It was a story of unwavering hope, a mother's fight against darkness, and a haunting mystery that gripped a small American town. In the months that followed Jacob's disappearance, the town of Maple Street seemed to shrink into a hushed, uneasy shell of itself. Every familiar place held a shadow, every routine a reminder of what was lost. Laura Whitmore's days blended into one another, long stretches of waking hours filled with searching, questioning, and aching silence. She woke each morning half expecting to see Jacob's small footsteps on the porch or hear his laughter from the kitchen, but the house remained cold and empty, echoing with absence. The loss became a heavy, constant presence, a growing void that seeped into every corner of her life. Tom Whitmore, Jacob's father, bore his pain differently. Once a jovial man who loved weekend fishing trips and backyard barbecues, Tom's shoulders sagged under the weight of grief. He spent hours in the dim garage, cleaning old fishing reels or tinkering with tools, as if physical labor might tether him to reality. He wanted to be strong for Laura, but their shared sorrow created a chasm between them, silent and unspoken. The couple clung to their memories, but found themselves drifting, unable to bridge the gulf that Jacob's absence carved into their hearts. Meanwhile, the investigation ground on, a slow and often frustrating crawl. Detectives pieced together timelines, interviewed witnesses, and examined surveillance footage, but clues were scarce. The bus driver remembered seeing Jacob waiting, but then suddenly gone, no sign of struggle or a suspicious figure. The school principal offered support, urging the community to stay vigilant and hopeful, but even the strongest reassurances felt hollow. Posters of Jacob's face faded on telephone poles and shop windows, replaced by newer ads and notices, as the collective urgency dulled over time. Yet Laura refused to let the case grow cold. Friends and neighbors tried to provide comfort, visiting with casseroles and whispered encouragements, but many did not understand the endless torment that comes with unresolved loss. Some grew uncomfortable, unsure how to help a family trapped in limbo. School friends gave quiet glances, avoiding conversations that might reopen wounds. Jacob's bedroom became a shrine of innocence frozen in time. A neatly made bed, a stack of favorite books, and a baseball glove waiting for a hand that would never return. Laura spent hours there, surrounded by fragments of the boy she loved, refusing to accept a future without him. The media spotlight brought a mix of solace and strain. Television interviews, newspaper stories, and radio segments amplified Jacob's story, drawing sympathy from far beyond the town's borders. Some strangers reached out with tips, letters, or words of support, rekindling flickers of hope. Yet with every lead that fizzled out, despair deepened. Laura kept meticulous journals, records of every call, every sighting reported, every sleepless night. Writing became her lifeline, a way to wrestle the darkness into words and maintain a semblance of control over the uncontrollable. As the first winter without Jacob descended, the town felt colder in more ways than one. The holidays, once filled with laughter and family traditions, became heavy with grief. Laura struggled to fill the silence left by an empty chair at the dinner table, the absence of excited Christmas morning footsteps. She clung to faith, attending church services and praying fervently, seeking answers that never came. The community organized candlelight vigils, their flames flickering against the biting cold, a symbol of collective hope and remembrance. Yet the question lingered. Where was Jacob? At school, teachers spoke gently of Jacob's spirit, sharing stories that kept his memory alive for classmates too young to understand permanent loss. The school counselor worked tirelessly with students affected by the disappearance, guiding them through confusing emotions and fears. Yet the pain radiated outward like ripples on water, touching everyone connected to the boy who had vanished in a single moment. The bus stop, once a place of greeting and goodbyes, became a silent monument, overgrown with weeds, waiting for a child who never came back. Despite the overwhelming despair, Laura refused to surrender to hopelessness. She began volunteering with local missing persons organizations, channeling her anguish into action. Through support groups, she found others who understood the unbearable limbo of unanswered questions. Sharing her story gave her strength, and in turn, she became a beacon of comfort for families still searching. Each day, she held on to the belief that one day, somehow, Jacob would return, or that the truth would emerge from the shadows. In quiet moments, Laura imagined what Jacob might be doing. Was he safe, scared, or forgotten? She pictured his smile, his boundless curiosity about the world. The love between mother and son was a flame that neither time nor distance could extinguish. It was this love that kept Laura going, even as years slipped by and the trail grew cold. The void Jacob left was vast and aching, but within it burned a stubborn hope, fragile yet unyielding. The story of a vanished boy was no longer just about loss. It was about a family's undying faith and the fight to reclaim their future from despair. 13 years had passed since that chilling day when Jacob disappeared from the bus stop. Yet the Whitmore family's hope remained a fragile ember, flickering stubbornly in the dark. Time, which often dulls the sharp edges of grief, only seemed to deepen their longing. Laura Whitmore had aged in those years, her hair threaded with silver, her face etched with the lines of sleepless nights and relentless searching. But inside, she still carried the fierce love for her missing boy. That love was an anchor, preventing her from surrendering to despair. The world outside moved on. The town of Maple Street changed slowly, as small towns do, but the Whitmore's pain was timeless. Laura's days were filled with support group meetings and silent vigils, but evenings were reserved for the quiet agony of waiting. Her husband, Tom, often retreated to the workshop, where the quiet hum of machinery offered a temporary distraction from the crushing reality. Both wore their grief in different ways, but shared the same desperate wish to find answers. Then one autumn afternoon, as the air turned crisp and leaves painted the streets with hues of gold and crimson, a small but profound event stirred the Whitmore's world. Laura was flipping through the latest edition of a national charity magazine she subscribed to, a publication dedicated to missing children and families affected by tragedy. Her eyes, weary but vigilant, scanned the pages, searching always for a clue, a name, any sign of a breakthrough. Suddenly, a photograph caught her breath. It was a picture of a young boy, standing shyly beside a smiling woman at a local community event in a town hundreds of miles away. The caption told a story: a boy who had recently been seen living with a foster family after being found wandering alone near a busy highway. The magazine article detailed how the boy had no memory of his past and had been too young to explain where he came from. As Laura's eyes lingered on the photo, her heart pounded. There was something hauntingly familiar about the boy's gaze, the same wide, curious eyes that Jacob had. She felt a surge of hope and fear tangled together, her mind racing to believe, yet bracing for disappointment. Tom arrived home that evening to find Laura clutching the magazine, her hands trembling. She showed him the picture, her voice barely a whisper. "Tom, this could be Jacob." His eyes widened, disbelief and cautious hope mingling in his expression. They stared at the photo together, searching for any distinctive feature: a scar on the knee, the way his hair curled at the nape of his neck, the shape of his smile. It was impossible to be certain, but the possibility ignited a fire they thought had long died. The next days were a blur of calls, emails, and desperate inquiries. Laura reached out to the charity, local law enforcement, and the foster family mentioned in the article. Each message carried a mix of hope and trepidation. The foster family was contacted cautiously, informed about the Whitmores and their missing son, and invited to meet with them. The tension was unbearable. Months of waiting for news, the cruel possibility that it might not be Jacob, yet a mother's heart clung to every hopeful thread. Meanwhile, the community of Maple Street rallied once again around the Whitmores. Candlelight vigils were organized, social media campaigns revived, and volunteers prepared to support the family through the process. For many who had watched the family suffer silently for over a decade, this renewed hope was a balm to their own aching hearts. The disappearance that once felt like a closed chapter was reopening with a raw intensity that gripped the town. On the day of the meeting with the Foster family, Laura's nerves were frayed. She dressed carefully, clutching a small photo album filled with Jacob's childhood pictures. Tom steadied her hand as they drove, their silence heavy with anticipation and fear. Upon arrival, they were greeted by a kindly couple who had cared for the boy, describing him as quiet, gentle, and painfully shy, traits that mirrored Jacob's personality perfectly. They spoke openly about the boy's struggles with memory, the difficulty in piecing together his past, and the hope that his real family might one day be found. As Laura sat beside the boy, now a young teenager, her heart thundered. She reached out slowly, touching his hand, searching for that intangible spark of recognition. The boy's eyes met hers with confusion and curiosity, but also a flicker of something deeper, an echo of a bond that transcended words. The moments stretched into hours as stories were exchanged, memories shared, and hope cautiously nurtured. DNA tests were arranged immediately, and while waiting for the results, the Whitmores experienced a bittersweet mixture of joy and uncertainty. Throughout this time, Laura's reflections often returned to the boy she knew, the Jacob who loved baseball, who treasured his comic books, who had vanished from a bus stop on a gray morning. She wondered if this boy felt the same loss, the same yearning for belonging. She hoped he could feel the love that had never faded. The waiting was agonizing, but the possibility of reunion was a light in the long, dark tunnel they had traveled for 13 years. This chapter of their story was not just about finding Jacob. It was about reclaiming hope, rediscovering strength, and confronting the pain that had shaped them. The Whitmores learned that healing, like hope, was a journey, not a destination. And no matter what the tests revealed, they vowed to stand together, anchored by the love that had carried them through the years. The days following the meeting with the Foster family stretched out like an endless desert, scorching with anxiety and hope. Laura and Tom Whitmore found themselves trapped in a limbo, caught between the desperate longing to know and the agonizing fear of disappointment. The DNA tests, so clinical and precise, felt like the cruelest kind of uncertainty. Each morning, Laura woke with a flutter of hope, only to fall into an uneasy sleep as doubt crept in. How many times had they wished, prayed, and imagined this moment? Now that it was within reach, the waiting was almost unbearable. In those 13 years, life had carved deep lines in their faces and weighed heavily on their spirits. Yet the Whitmores refused to give up. Their home was still filled with Jacob's things, his old baseball glove resting on a shelf, his favorite comic books stacked neatly on the coffee table, his small shoes by the door, silent reminders of a boy frozen in time. Laura often found herself sitting in his empty room, her fingers tracing the outlines of posters on the wall, whispering Jacob's name like a sacred prayer. It was here that the strength of a mother's love revealed itself most poignantly, a bond so fierce that not even time could sever it. Tom, too, wrestled with his own demons. Though he rarely spoke of his pain, his eyes betrayed a storm within. The memory of that day, the moment he realized Jacob was gone, haunted him endlessly. At work, he was quieter, more withdrawn, but when he came home, he made sure to be present, to hold Laura's hand through the hardest nights. Together, they clung to each other, their shared grief creating a fragile but unbreakable shield against despair. Meanwhile, the local police reopened the case with fresh eyes, encouraged by the newfound lead. Detective Harris, who had been a rookie when Jacob vanished, was now a seasoned investigator determined to find justice. He pored over old files, revisited witnesses, and coordinated with authorities near the Foster family's town. The renewed effort brought a cautious optimism to the Whitmores, but it also reminded them how fragile the line between hope and heartbreak truly was. The community of Maple Street, which had stood by the Whitmores for years, rallied anew. Flyers were updated and distributed. Local news covered the story, and social media buzzed with support. Strangers sent letters of encouragement, neighbors offered meals, and volunteers organized search parties in nearby woods and abandoned buildings. It was a collective act of faith, a testament to the power of human kindness in the face of tragedy. For Laura and Tom, it was a reminder that they were not alone, even in the loneliest moments. As the weeks crawled by, Laura's thoughts often drifted to the boy she had met, the one who might be Jacob. She wondered what life had been like for him. What fears and hopes had shaped his young heart? Did he feel lost, or did he find comfort in the foster family's care? These questions lingered in the silence of the night, unanswered yet impossible to ignore. Laura made a promise to herself that no matter the outcome, she would do everything to help him find peace and belonging. The day the test results arrived was a moment suspended in time. Laura was at the kitchen table, the morning light casting soft shadows around her. Tom stood nearby, his hand trembling as he reached for the envelope. With a breath that seemed to hold the weight of the world, he unfolded the paper and scanned the words. The room fell silent, the only sound the beating of their hearts. The verdict was clear. The boy was not their Jacob. Shock crashed over them like a wave. It was not the news they had hoped for, but it was still a piece of the puzzle. A cruel twist, yet it didn't extinguish the ember of hope, just redirected it. For the first time in years, the Whitmores had concrete evidence to close one door, but the maze of unanswered questions remained. Who was this boy, and where was their son? Though grief returned with renewed force, Laura and Tom refused to surrender. They knew the journey to find Jacob was far from over. The photo in the magazine had been a beacon, but the path ahead was shrouded in shadows. Their love and determination, however, were stronger than ever. In the following days, they began to rebuild their resolve. They revisited the original police reports, talked to old witnesses again, and scoured every possible lead. Detective Harris continued his search tirelessly, convinced that the truth was waiting to be uncovered. And Laura, fueled by a mother's unwavering instinct, pledged to keep fighting. For Jacob, for herself, and for the family they once were. This chapter of waiting, though painful, was a testament to the human spirit's resilience. It showed that hope is not a simple feeling, but a fierce act of courage. For the Whitmores, every day was a step forward, a quiet promise that they would not stop until they brought their boy home. And in that promise, there was a light that no darkness could ever extinguish. Just when the heavy weight of disappointment seemed unbearable, a new twist emerged that breathed fresh life into the Whitmores' desperate search. One late afternoon, Laura returned home from the local grocery store, her arms laden with bags, when she noticed a plain white envelope slipped beneath the door. Curious, she dropped the groceries and bent to pick it up. There was no return address, only her name, Laura Whitmore, neatly handwritten. Her heart raced with cautious hope. Who could have sent this? Was it another cruel prank, or something more? She carried the envelope into the quiet kitchen, where Tom was reading the newspaper. Together, they carefully opened it, revealing a single folded letter inside. The handwriting was familiar, yet trembling with age. It read, "Dear Laura and Tom, I hope this letter finds you well. I don't know how much you will believe me, but I have information about Jacob. Please, if you want to know the truth, meet me at the old diner on Maple Street tomorrow at noon. For no one else. This is about your son." Laura's hands trembled as she read the words aloud. Tom looked up, his eyes wide with a mixture of skepticism and longing. Neither spoke for a long moment. The letter was unsigned, mysterious, but it was the first sign of direct contact in years. A spark ignited inside them, a fragile, flickering hope they dared not extinguish. That night, sleep evaded Laura. Her mind spun with questions. Who was this person? Why had they waited so long? Could this be a trap? Or was it finally a chance to uncover the truth behind Jacob's disappearance? Tom stayed by her side, his presence steady and reassuring, though his worry matched hers. They agreed to go to the diner, cautiously but determined. The next day dawned gray and drizzly, the weather mirroring their mixed emotions. Laura and Tom arrived early, choosing a small booth near the window. They ordered coffee, their eyes constantly scanning the entrance. Time seemed to slow as minutes ticked by. Each passing moment built a tense anticipation, as if the diner itself held its breath. At exactly noon, the door opened, and a man stepped inside. He was older, his face worn with lines of hardship and regret. His eyes were shadowed, but carried a flicker of recognition when he saw the Whitmores. He approached slowly and sat down across from them without a word. After a pause, the man spoke softly. "My name is Frank Reynolds. I knew Jacob before he vanished." His voice trembled, weighed down by years of guilt. "I've kept quiet because I was scared, but I can't live with the silence anymore." Laura felt her heart pound. Finally, a person who might hold answers. Frank told a story that was as chilling as it was heartbreaking. He was a former employee at the charity that had published the magazine featuring the photo of the boy. According to Frank, the boy in the photo wasn't Jacob, but someone connected to a much larger mystery involving child trafficking. "I saw things no one should ever see," Frank whispered. There were children being moved between families, hidden in plain sight. Jacob might have been one of them. The Whitmores listened, horrified but focused. Frank revealed that years ago, he had helped some children escape, but Jacob's trail went cold. "I kept hoping someone would come looking, and now you have," he said, eyes filling with tears. "If you want to find Jacob, you need to look beyond the obvious. The answers aren't in the police files. They're in the shadows of the system itself." Laura's mind raced as she absorbed the weight of Frank's confession. The idea that their son's disappearance was part of something so sinister was almost too much to bear. Yet it explained the frustrating dead ends they had faced. Tom squeezed her hand, silently promising to fight harder than ever. Frank handed them an old, tattered notebook filled with names, dates, and addresses, his secret records of the children he had helped and those still missing. "Be careful," he warned. "There are powerful people involved, and not everyone wants the truth to come out." The gravity of his words settled over them like a storm cloud. Leaving the diner, Laura and Tom felt the ground shift beneath them. Their search had taken a darker, more dangerous turn, but the possibility of finally finding Jacob, alive or not, drove them forward. They knew the path ahead would be filled with peril, but their love and hope were stronger than fear. That night, back at home, they pored over Frank's notebook, marking names and places that might lead them closer to the truth. The Whitmores understood that this new chapter would demand courage, resilience, and unrelenting determination. But for the first time in 13 years, they glimpsed a fragile light at the end of their long, painful journey, a light that could finally bring their boy home. The morning after their meeting with Frank, Laura and Tom woke with a renewed sense of purpose, though exhaustion lingered in their bones. The notebook Frank had given them lay open on the kitchen table, its yellowed pages filled with hurried, faded handwriting. Names of missing children, addresses of suspicious homes, and dates that spanned decades filled the margins. It was a tangled web, one that promised hope but demanded courage and meticulous investigation. Determined to act, Laura picked up the phone and called their old friend Sarah, a retired private investigator who had always supported their search. Sarah's sharp mind and unwavering loyalty would be invaluable. When Sarah arrived that afternoon, her expression darkened as she scanned Frank's notes. "This is bigger than I thought," she said quietly. "It looks like a network, people connected to charity groups, foster homes, even local officials. We'll need to be careful." Together, the three began cross-referencing the notebook with public records and newspaper archives. Every name led to another shadowy lead. Every address uncovered disturbing rumors of children who had vanished without a trace. The Whitmores' town, once familiar and safe, now felt haunted by secrets lurking just beneath the surface. Yet, in this darkness, their resolve only grew stronger. Days turned into weeks. Laura and Tom balanced their daily lives with the painstaking research and discreet interviews Sarah arranged. The couple met quietly with former charity workers and families who had fostered children, slowly piecing together patterns of disappearances and suspicious adoptions. Some doors slammed shut, Others creaked open just enough to offer glimpses of truth. One evening, Sarah shared a breakthrough. "I found something," she whispered, sliding a photocopy across the table. It was a faded newspaper clipping from 13 years ago, the same year Jacob vanished. The article mentioned a small, rural foster home outside town where children had mysteriously gone missing. The place had been quietly shut down after a local journalist began asking questions. Tom's hands clenched the paper. "Do you think Jacob could have been there?" he asked. Laura swallowed hard, emotions swirling like a storm. The possibility was terrifying, yet offered a lead worth pursuing. With Sarah's help, they traveled to the rundown building on the outskirts of the county. The foster home was now abandoned, its windows boarded and walls cracked from years of neglect. Standing there, Laura imagined her son running through those halls, frightened and alone. She pressed her hand to the cold door, feeling the weight of years pressing down on her. Inside, the dust settled thick, and the silence was broken only by their footsteps. The three of them searched for clues, old files, letters, anything that might have been left behind. In a hidden corner of the attic, Laura discovered a box filled with worn toys and faded photographs. Among them was a picture of a boy who bore an uncanny resemblance to Jacob, smiling shyly next to other children. A date scribbled on the back matched the month he disappeared. This discovery was a bittersweet victory. It confirmed their worst fears, but also brought them closer to answers. Sarah's experience taught them to be cautious. "We're on the right path, but there's more we don't know," she said firmly. "We need to keep digging, but quietly. Whoever was behind this may still have friends in high places." Returning home that night, Laura and Tom were filled with a mixture of hope and dread. The shadows they had once feared were now real and close. Yet, they clung to the memory of Jacob's smile in the photograph, a reminder of the boy they loved, waiting somewhere to be found. Their lives became consumed by the search. Neighbors whispered rumors. Some offered help, others turned away. But the Whitmores refused to give up. Every lead, every piece of evidence, was a step closer to unraveling the mystery that had torn their family apart. And as the days grew colder, Laura held onto the fragile thread of hope that one day, after 13 long years, they would finally bring their son home. The crisp autumn day brought a strange mix of anticipation and anxiety as Laura sorted through the mail that had piled up on the kitchen counter. Bills, advertisements, and the usual clutter. But then, nestled among them, was the latest issue of a charity magazine she had subscribed to months earlier, hoping it might hold clues. She didn't expect much. After all, years of dead ends had worn down her optimism. But something urged her to open it carefully, page by page. Her eyes scanned through stories of fundraising events and testimonials from volunteers, until a photograph caught her breath. There, amidst a collage of smiling faces, was a boy, dark-haired, with familiar eyes that mirrored Jacob's exactly. The caption read, "Jacob Matthews, now thriving at a children's shelter in the Midwest, thanks to generous donors." Laura's hands trembled as tears welled in her eyes. Could it really be her son? After 13 long years, a photograph like a fragile thread tethering hope to reality. Tom came into the room, hearing her gasp. "Laura? What is it?" She showed him the magazine, voice trembling. "Look, this is Jacob. They found him. But the photo was dated just a few months ago, and the shelter's name was unfamiliar to both of them." This revelation threw open a new chapter in their search, filled with cautious excitement and deep uncertainty. Without wasting a moment, Laura called the charity organization listed beneath the article. The voice on the other end was calm, but careful, explaining that Jacob had been brought to their shelter recently, rescued from an abusive environment. They had been trying to locate his family, but had no clear leads until the magazine's publication. The couple's hearts swelled with relief and worry all at once. Was this truly their Jacob? How had he survived all these years? And why had no one reached out sooner? The days that followed were a whirlwind of phone calls and emails. Laura and Tom learned that Jacob had been moved through several foster homes before ending up at the shelter. His memories were fragmented, a mosaic of shadows and fleeting images. The shelter's staff described him as quiet yet resilient, a boy with a spark of hope buried beneath layers of pain. Laura could barely contain her emotions as she prepared to visit the shelter. 13 years of agony had brought her to this moment, standing on the cusp of reunion. Tom held her hand tightly, sharing her fear and excitement. "No matter what," he said, "we'll find our boy again." The weight of those words settled between them like a promise. When they arrived, the shelter's modest building seemed both welcoming and stark. Volunteers bustled about, caring for children who had known too much hardship. In a quiet room, Jacob sat with a book in his hands, eyes wide as he looked up at the visitors. The moment their eyes met, something unspoken passed between them. A recognition, a connection, as if time had folded itself back to that lost afternoon at the bus stop. Jacob was hesitant at first, unsure of these strangers who claimed to be his parents. Yet, over hours of gentle conversation, stories were shared, his memories, their love, the years they had lost. Tears flowed freely as past and present collided, a fragile bridge built from hope and pain. The shelter's staff watched quietly, moved by the reunion unfolding before them. But the road ahead was uncertain. Jacob's journey was far from over. The trauma of years in the shadows had left deep scars. Trust had to be rebuilt slowly, patiently, with every step forward a testament to resilience. Laura and Tom knew that love alone wouldn't erase the past, but it would be their light in the darkness. That night, as they left the shelter, the chill in the air seemed less biting. For the first time in over a decade, they felt a flicker of peace, an ember of hope that maybe, just maybe, their family could be whole again. The photo in the charity magazine had been a beacon in the long night, guiding them back to each other. And though the path ahead was steep, their hearts were ready to walk it together. The days following their reunion were filled with both joy and unease. Jacob stayed at the shelter, still overwhelmed by the sudden reappearance of parents he barely recognized, while Laura and Tom worked to piece together the fragments of his past. It became clear that the photo in the magazine was only the first thread in a tangled web of mysteries that stretched back over 13 years. Laura sat in the shelter's small office, reviewing files the staff had collected. Reports from social workers, foster care notes, even police records, all painted a picture of a boy who had survived against staggering odds, but whose trail had vanished after his initial disappearance. No one seemed to know who had taken him or why, only that he had been found wandering near a dilapidated farm some years ago, alone and frightened. Jacob's memories were elusive. He spoke cautiously about a man who had promised to keep him safe, but had instead locked him away. His descriptions were vague, shadows of fear clouding his eyes as he tried to recall details. Laura and Tom listened, hearts breaking, but also grateful for any glimpse into what their son had endured. The boy they once knew had grown into someone both fragile and fiercely determined. Determined to uncover the truth, Tom contacted an old friend from the police department who had worked on missing children's cases. Together, they revisited cold leads, revisiting witness statements that had been overlooked, and tracking down anyone who might have seen something unusual around the time Jacob vanished. The investigation reopened doors that had long been sealed. One late afternoon, as Laura pored over the charity magazine again, she noticed a small symbol in the corner of the page, a logo for a foundation that worked with exploited children. Curious, she called the foundation's hotline. The woman who answered was compassionate but cautious, confirming that the foundation had been involved in rescuing children from trafficking rings across the Midwest. Could Jacob's shelter and this foundation be linked? This new connection offered a sliver of hope. Laura and Tom learned that Jacob's rescue was part of a larger sting operation that had broken up a trafficking ring, but the names of the victims had been kept confidential to protect them. They pleaded for access to any information about the boy with dark hair and familiar eyes. It was a slow process, tangled in bureaucracy and legal protections, but every answer brought them closer to the truth. Meanwhile, Jacob's adjustment was delicate. He struggled with trust and fear, haunted by memories of confinement and betrayal. Laura found herself whispering softly during the long nights, recounting stories of his childhood, his first bike ride, his laughter by the river, the warmth of family dinners. Each story was a lifeline, a reminder of belonging, trying to stitch his broken past to the present. Tom, too, became his anchor. He spent hours teaching Jacob how to play catch in the park, talking about baseball and school, grounding the boy in simple joys that had once filled their home. Slowly, Jacob's smile returned, hesitant at first, then genuine. The boy who had vanished so long ago was coming back, piece by fragile piece. One evening, Laura received an unexpected phone call from a woman claiming to have information about the night Jacob disappeared. Her voice was shaky but resolute, saying she had been too afraid to come forward before. She described a suspicious van near the bus stop and a man who had been watching children for weeks. Laura's heart raced. Could this be the lead they desperately needed? The woman agreed to meet at a local cafe. Laura and Tom arrived, nerves coiled tightly as they waited. When the woman appeared, her eyes told stories of fear and regret. She spoke quietly about a network that preyed on vulnerable children, how she had witnessed Jacob being taken but had been powerless to stop it. Her courage reignited the family's determination to bring the truth fully into the light. From that day, the pieces began to fit together. The man who had taken Jacob was part of the trafficking ring linked to the Foundation's rescue. But why had no one connected the dots earlier? Why had Jacob's family remained in the dark for so long? Laura and Tom's quest became a battle not just to find their son, but to uncover the failures that allowed this nightmare to persist. As autumn deepened, so did their resolve. They worked with investigators, lawyers, and counselors to push for justice, determined to protect other children from suffering the same fate. Jacob's story became more than a family reunion. It was a beacon for others, a call to action against a hidden evil. Through it all, the love between Laura, Tom, and Jacob held steady. Their wounds were raw, but so was their hope. The road ahead would be long, with challenges no family should ever face. Yet in each other's presence, they found the strength to keep moving forward. That night, as Laura tucked Jacob into bed, she whispered a promise. "We'll find the rest of your story, Jacob, and we'll write the next chapters together." Jacob's eyes shone with a quiet determination that mirrored her own. After 13 years lost in the shadows, the light was finally beginning to break through. As the investigation gained momentum, the long-buried truths began to surface, illuminating dark corners of a world Laura and Tom had only glimpsed in their worst nightmares. The law enforcement officers working the reopened case revealed the harrowing details they had uncovered. Jacob's disappearance had been orchestrated by a local ring involved in child trafficking, operating quietly yet ruthlessly in their own community. The same group had exploited dozens of children over the years, slipping beneath the notice of authorities and neighbors alike. Laura's heart ached with both relief and horror. Relief because they now had proof that Jacob had not simply vanished by chance, but was taken by criminals who preyed on innocents. Horror because so many others had suffered similar fates while the world remained unaware. The charity magazine photo, seemingly a random piece of kindness, was actually a critical lifeline thrown into the vast sea of uncertainty. With the newfound cooperation from the Trafficking Foundation, Laura and Tom were granted access to records about the rescue missions that led to Jacob's recovery years ago. Names were withheld for protection, but dates, locations, and survivor testimonies painted a picture of the brutal reality Jacob had faced. Laura read with tears as survivors recounted abuse, fear, and the struggle to reclaim their identities. Among them was a boy with dark hair and the same cautious eyes she knew all too well. Jacob himself began to remember fragments, snippets of a life lived in shadows. He spoke hesitantly about a farmhouse where he had been held, guarded by cold men who threatened anyone who tried to help. He described the camaraderie he had found among other children, their whispered plans to escape, their quiet hopes for freedom. Though his memories were patchy, the courage behind his words was undeniable. Tom sat beside him during these moments, offering reassurance. "You're safe now, Jacob. We'll face this together." The boy's eyes flickered with gratitude and determination, as if drawing strength from the presence of family that had never truly abandoned him. Despite the darkness that had marked his childhood, the flicker of light within him was growing stronger. Meanwhile, Laura pushed forward with the cold case detectives, providing them with a witness's account from the cafe meeting. The description of the suspicious van and the man lurking near the bus stop led to a breakthrough. Old surveillance footage surfaced, grainy but unmistakable. A man fitting the description, driving a van and watching the neighborhood. His face, blurred yet chilling, brought a name to the forefront. A man with a history of suspicious behavior and minor offenses, long suspected but never tied to anything substantial. The detectives dug deeper into his past and connections. They uncovered ties to a network that moved children across state lines, using fear and manipulation to silence victims and witnesses. The revelations rocked the community, a quiet town that had hidden this darkness in plain sight. Local leaders vowed to act, launching new measures to prevent such tragedies. Laura and Tom attended meetings with officials and advocacy groups, determined to use their personal ordeal to foster change. Their voices, once filled with pain and uncertainty, now carried purpose and hope. Jacob's story became a symbol, rallying neighbors and lawmakers to protect vulnerable children and support families in crisis. At home, the healing continued, slow but steady. Jacob, now more comfortable and trusting, began attending therapy sessions to process his trauma. His progress was punctuated by moments of laughter, small victories that felt monumental to a family reunited against all odds. Laura marveled at the resilience of the child who had once disappeared without a trace. One chilly evening, as golden leaves fell outside their window, Jacob asked questions about his life before the kidnapping, his friends, school, favorite games. Laura answered with gentle stories, painting a picture of a childhood waiting to be rediscovered. Tom added details about their hopes and dreams for him, the future they all envisioned. Together, they planned steps forward, school enrollment, community activities, rebuilding the simple joys of childhood that had been stolen. Each day was a gift, a chance to rewrite the narrative that had once seemed irrevocably broken. Yet beneath the surface, Laura knew there were still unanswered questions. Who else had been involved? Were there others out there still waiting to be found? The fight for justice was far from over, but with each revelation, each moment of connection, they moved closer to healing and hope. Jacob's smile grew more genuine with each passing day. He was no longer just a boy who vanished at the bus stop. He was a survivor, a beacon of strength amid the darkness. And as the family embraced their newfound life, they carried with them a message of courage and perseverance, proof that even the longest shadows could be lifted by love and truth. As Jacob's world slowly began to settle, the shadows of his past still lingered in quiet corners. One afternoon, while sorting through a box of belongings found in the storage unit tied to the trafficking ring, Laura uncovered a faded photo album. The worn edges and yellowed pages felt like a fragile bridge between the life Jacob had lost and the family who never stopped searching for him. Each picture was a window into a world frozen in time. Smiling faces of children, snapshots of ordinary days before the nightmare. Jacob picked up the album with a tentative curiosity. He traced the faces, the places, and the moments captured long ago. Though the memories had been obscured by years of silence, the images stirred something deep inside him. Faint echoes of laughter, friendship, and a childhood nearly erased. The photo of a picnic in a sunlit park made his eyes mist over as he recognized a girl who had shared stolen moments of joy with him. The discovery ignited a quiet urgency in Laura and Tom. If they could identify these children, perhaps they could locate more survivors, bring others home, and finally unravel the extent of the trafficking network's cruelty. With renewed determination, they reached out to local authorities and advocacy groups, sharing the album and piecing together clues from the images. Meanwhile, Jacob's therapy sessions delved deeper into the fragments of his experience. He spoke about the fleeting moments of hope and despair, the faces of those who helped him escape, and the terrifying voices that tried to break his spirit. His words were halting but filled with a quiet strength, a testament to the resilience that had carried him through years of captivity. Tom and Laura remained by his side during these difficult conversations, offering comfort and steadfast support. They celebrated every small breakthrough. The first time Jacob spoke about a particular memory without fear, the day he recounted a happy moment from his early years. Healing was a mosaic, each piece essential to the bigger picture of recovery. As the investigation progressed, authorities confirmed that the man seen in the surveillance footage was indeed the ring's enforcer, a figure who instilled fear but was now within reach of justice. His arrest sent shockwaves through the community and brought a sense of closure to families who had lived in torment for years. Yet, it also reminded everyone that the fight against such darkness was ongoing. Laura found herself drawn to the survivors' stories, attending support meetings and connecting with other families affected by similar tragedies. These encounters forged bonds of shared pain and hope and inspired efforts to create safer spaces for children in the community. She and Tom began volunteering with organizations dedicated to prevention and healing, turning their heartbreak into action. Jacob's world expanded as he enrolled in a local school, where teachers greeted him with kindness and understanding. Though the transition was challenging, he found solace in new friendships and familiar routines. The laughter of children in the playground, the rhythm of lessons, and the simple pleasure of a book helped rebuild the life that had been stolen from him. One evening, as the family sat together around the dinner table, Jacob shared a quiet realization. "I'm starting to remember little things that feel like pieces of a puzzle," he said softly. Laura smiled, holding his hand. "Every memory is a step forward, Jacob. We're here for every step you take." The days turned into weeks, and the healing continued. Jacob's smile grew brighter, the weight of his past lightening with each new experience. Laura and Tom marveled at the boy who had endured so much, yet still held onto hope. Their journey was far from over, but the pieces of the past were finally falling into place, revealing a future filled with possibility and love. Despite the progress and the emerging light of hope, shadows of doubt crept quietly into Jacob's heart. The memories he pieced together were fragmented, sometimes painful, and often confusing. He wrestled with the fear that parts of his past might forever remain lost, leaving holes in his identity that no amount of love or support could fill. At night, he sometimes awoke trembling, haunted by indistinct faces and the echo of a voice that wasn't quite clear. Laura noticed these changes. The smiles became fewer, replaced by moments when Jacob's eyes would grow distant, clouded with uncertainty. Tom, too, saw the flicker of hesitation in his son's steps, the way he hesitated to speak about certain days. Together, they realized that healing was not a linear path. It wound through dark valleys as well as bright peaks. One afternoon, a therapy session unearthed a new challenge. Jacob hesitated when asked about a particular memory, a moment involving a man who wasn't part of the trafficking ring, but had appeared during his captivity. The details were hazy, and the fear resurfaced, heavier than before. "I don't know if I can tell you," Jacob whispered, eyes fixed on the floor. His therapist, patient and gentle, encouraged him to share his own pace, assuring him that his safety and comfort came first. This reluctance sparked a new concern for Laura and Tom. What if there were parts of his story still hidden? What if someone else, someone unknown, had played a role in Jacob's disappearance? The questions multiplied, gnawing at their resolve. Yet, they held tight to the belief that the truth, no matter how difficult, was necessary for Jacob's complete healing. Meanwhile, the charity magazine that had published Jacob's photo started receiving an influx of letters and tips. Some were hopeful, others skeptical, but all carried a shared sense of urgency and compassion. Laura read each letter carefully, sometimes finding clues, sometimes dead ends. The support from strangers, from a community far beyond their small town, was both overwhelming and comforting. At the local police precinct, detectives revisited old files with renewed vigor. They combed through witness statements and surveillance footage, looking for anything that could connect to Jacob's faint memories. One lead took them to a neighboring state, where a man matching a sketch from Jacob's description had been arrested for unrelated crimes. The possibility that this man could be linked to the trafficking ring added complexity to the investigation. Tom felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him. The man who had vanished from the bus stop was not just a missing boy anymore. He was a symbol of resilience, mystery, and unanswered questions. At night, Tom would stare at the ceiling, wondering if they had missed something crucial in those early frantic days of searching. The guilt of not finding Jacob sooner was a silent burden he carried. Yet, amidst the doubts and fears, a steady current of hope persisted. Jacob's courage in facing his past, the unwavering support of his family, and the collective efforts of the community formed a lifeline. Each day brought a new chance to uncover truths, to mend broken pieces, and a step closer to a future unburdened by shadows. Laura found solace in writing, a journal where she poured her fears, hopes, and memories. It became a quiet refuge, a way to process the whirlwind of emotions that surrounded their family. Through the pages, she discovered strength she hadn't known she possessed, a determination to keep fighting for Jacob and every child lost to darkness. As the investigation expanded, new faces emerged, survivors who had escaped similar fates, willing to share their stories to help others. Their voices joined Jacob's, weaving a tapestry of resilience and survival that transcended pain. Together, they became advocates, shining a light on a hidden world that many preferred to ignore. Jacob, too, began to find his own voice. In small, guarded ways, he shared his experiences with trusted friends and counselors. His story was not just one of loss, but of hope, a testament to the strength of the human spirit. With every word spoken, the past lost its power to define him, replaced by the promise of healing and belonging. One evening, as the family gathered by the fireplace, Laura read aloud a letter from a stranger who had once been lost but was now found. The words resonated deeply, a reminder that even in the darkest times, the light of connection and compassion could guide the way. Jacob listened quietly, a faint smile touching his lips, the first sign that peace was beginning to settle within him. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, the family faced it together, stronger, wiser, and bound by a love that no darkness could extinguish. In the quiet moments between fear and hope, they found meaning, and in the shared journey, they discovered the true power of family. Months after the magazine photo had sparked new hope, one chilly autumn afternoon brought an unexpected visitor to the doorstep of the Miller family. Laura was just finishing dinner preparations when the doorbell rang, a sharp sound that echoed through their quiet house. Tom opened the door to find a middle-aged man standing hesitantly on their porch, holding a worn leather satchel and looking nervously at the ground. The man introduced himself as Michael, a former carnival worker who had recently come across the charity magazine's feature on Jacob's disappearance. His eyes, shadowed by years of regret, met Tom's with a mixture of fear and urgency. "I have information, things I never thought I'd say out loud," he began, voice trembling. Laura joined them, sensing the gravity of this moment. Michael explained that he had worked at the county fair the day Jacob vanished and had seen something no one else had reported. His story unfolded slowly, each word weighted with the burden of years spent in silence. He described a suspicious van parked near the fairgrounds, a van that did not belong to any of the vendors. Michael remembered a group of men unloading crates late that afternoon, their faces partially hidden under hats and shadows. He had wanted to speak up back then, but feared retaliation from those men who were known to be dangerous. The revelation sent ripples through the family. Tom felt a surge of hope mixed with anger. How many years had passed while this information remained locked away? Laura comforted Jacob, who listened quietly, the pieces of his own fragmented memories suddenly aligning with Michael's account. The mystery deepened, but now they had a new lead to pursue. Detectives quickly reopened the case, focusing on the details Michael provided. His testimony helped identify the van's owner, a man with a history of shady dealings and rumored involvement in illegal trafficking. Though the trail had grown cold over the years, the renewed investigation uncovered new evidence hidden in a nearby storage unit, abandoned and forgotten. Inside the unit, officers found belongings linked to missing children, personal items, photographs, and a faded journal filled with cryptic notes. One photo in particular shocked everyone, a group picture showing Jacob, alongside other children, all wearing expressions that mixed fear and hope. The image was weathered but undeniable. It confirmed the terrifying reality that Jacob had been part of a larger network, a secret world hidden beneath the town's ordinary surface. The discovery sparked media attention and public outcry. Community members rallied around the Miller family, organizing vigils and fundraisers to support ongoing investigations and victim services. The town, once overshadowed by the sorrow of Jacob's disappearance, began to unite in purpose and determination to prevent such tragedies from happening again. For Jacob, the revelations were bittersweet. The truth he had sought for so long finally emerged, but with it came the weight of memories he had hoped to leave behind. Therapy sessions grew more intense as he confronted the faces and moments tied to the trafficking ring. Yet, each step forward strengthened his resolve to heal, not just for himself, but for the others still trapped in silence. Laura remained his steadfast anchor. She navigated the complexities of legal battles, media scrutiny, and emotional turbulence with unwavering grace. Her faith in justice and love became the foundation upon which their family rebuilt itself. Tom, too, found a renewed sense of purpose, advocating for child protection laws and speaking at local events to raise awareness. Meanwhile, Michael's courage inspired others to come forward. Survivors who had hidden their pain for years began sharing their stories, creating a powerful chorus that demanded change. Their testimonies prompted law enforcement to expand the investigation nationwide, unraveling a web of exploitation that stretched far beyond their small town. As the story unfolded, Jacob found moments of peace in unexpected places: a quiet morning walk, a shared laugh with his parents, a letter from a fellow survivor. These small joys reminded him that life, though scarred, still held beauty and hope. He embraced the support around him, no longer defined solely by the darkness he endured, but by the light he was choosing to create. The Miller family's journey became a beacon for others, a testament to resilience, love, and the power of truth. Their story was not just about loss, but about the unyielding human spirit's ability to overcome even the deepest wounds. Together, they proved that healing was possible, and that no child, no family, should ever have to face such shadows alone. After the storm of revelations and renewed investigations, the Miller family found themselves standing at the threshold of a new chapter. The weight of years spent in uncertainty was beginning to lift, replaced by cautious hope and a commitment to healing. Jacob's return to everyday life was far from simple. Each day presented its own challenges, but it was clear he was no longer alone in this journey. The community's support had woven a safety net around him and his family, a collective embrace that had been absent for far too long. Jacob enrolled in a local community college, pursuing courses that had once seemed impossible. His passion for art, something nurtured even in the darkest times, became a channel for his emotions. Through painting and drawing, he expressed feelings that words couldn't capture. His mother, Laura, often stood quietly in the background during his art shows, tears quietly slipping down her cheeks as she saw her son transform pain into beauty. Tom, meanwhile, balanced his work with advocacy, speaking publicly about their experience and encouraging other families to stay vigilant and united. Yet, healing wasn't a linear path. There were moments when the past surged forward, uninvited and raw. Jacob sometimes woke in the middle of the night, haunted by nightmares that transported him back to those shadowy days. The journal found in the storage unit had become a grim reminder of the children who never escaped, whose stories remained unfinished. These moments tested his resilience, but they also reinforced his determination not to let the darkness win. Counseling sessions grew deeper and more frequent. Jacob worked closely with a therapist specializing in trauma and recovery. Together, they unpacked memories, learned coping skills, and set boundaries, small victories that marked progress. Laura and Tom joined family therapy, finding ways to communicate their fears and hopes without overwhelming each other. The years of silence and misunderstanding slowly gave way to empathy and shared strength. In the midst of healing, an unexpected opportunity arrived. A national charity that had featured Jacob's story in their magazine reached out with a proposal. They wanted Jacob to become a spokesperson for child protection awareness. Initially, Jacob hesitated, wary of the spotlight and the reopening of wounds. But after discussing it with his parents and therapist, he saw the potential to turn his painful past into a powerful message of hope and prevention. Jacob's speeches and interviews touched countless hearts. His honest, heartfelt words resonated especially with parents who had lived with the fear of losing a child. He spoke of vigilance, of listening to children, and of community responsibility. More than that, he shared his story as proof that recovery was possible, that even the darkest moments could be met with courage and love. His voice, once silenced by trauma, now echoed with strength and conviction. The town itself began to change. Schools implemented new safety programs, local law enforcement improved their child protection protocols, and neighbors looked out for one another more closely. Jacob's case became a catalyst for change, transforming grief into action. Public memorials were held for missing children nationwide, a solemn reminder that the fight to protect the innocent was ongoing and urgent. At home, the Millers found solace in ordinary moments. Family dinners, Sunday hikes, and quiet evenings reading together became precious rituals. These simple acts, once taken for granted, now symbolize survival and hope. Jacob's younger sister, Emily, blossomed under the renewed sense of safety, her laughter filling the house like sunlight piercing through clouds. But the healing was not just personal, it was communal. The survivors who had come forward inspired a support network that stretched beyond their town, connecting people across the country. Jacob attended retreats and workshops where others shared their journeys, creating bonds that helped break the isolation so many had endured. Each story added strength to the movement, a collective vow to never forget and never stop fighting. As the years passed, Jacob's art evolved, reflecting both his pain and his growth. Galleries showcased his work, often alongside other survivors' creations, turning trauma into testimony. The colors he used were bold and unapologetic, capturing the complexity of his experience, the darkness, the hope, the healing. His exhibitions raised funds for charities dedicated to child safety and recovery programs, continuing his mission beyond words. Tom and Laura, now seasoned advocates, balanced their activism with quiet moments of reflection. They kept Jacob's bedroom just as he had left it on that fateful day 13 years ago, a small shrine of memory and love. Yet, they also filled their home with new photographs and mementos of triumph and joy, a testament to their family's enduring spirit. The community never forgot Jacob's story. Annual remembrance events became a tradition, where stories were shared, candles lit, and promises renewed. The town's name, once whispered in sadness, was now spoken with pride, proof that even in tragedy, hope could grow. In one of his final speeches of the year, Jacob stood before a crowd gathered at the town hall, his voice steady and sure. "We cannot change the past," he said, "but we can shape the future. By speaking out, by standing together, we ensure that no child is forgotten and no family walks alone." His words resonated deeply, a message not just of survival, but of empowerment. The Miller family's journey was far from over, but the scars they bore were no longer wounds that defined them. Instead, they were marks of endurance, resilience, and above all, love. Through heartbreak and healing, loss and hope, they had reclaimed their lives. And in doing so, they became a beacon, lighting the way for others to find their own path from darkness into light. Years had passed since Jacob's return, yet the echoes of that haunting disappearance lingered in the Miller household like a faint, persistent hum. But time, with its quiet patience, had woven threads of healing through the fabric of their lives. The shadows no longer swallowed their days whole. Instead, they cast a contrast that made moments of light all the more vivid. For the Millers, closure was not about forgetting or erasing the past, but learning to live alongside it, finding peace amid memories that refused to fade. The community that had once been fractured by fear had grown into a tight-knit family of survivors, advocates, and believers in second chances. Jacob had become a symbol not just of endurance, but of the profound human capacity to rise, to forgive, and to love fiercely despite loss. His art continued to captivate hearts and minds, telling stories that words alone could never fully express. Galleries, schools, and public spaces displayed his work, each piece a testament to survival's complex beauty. On a crisp autumn evening, the Millers gathered once again at the town's annual remembrance event. The ceremony was bathed in soft candlelight, a gentle glow illuminating faces lined with both sorrow and hope. Laura, standing beside Tom, felt a surge of gratitude for the journey they had traveled. The past still whispered in her ear, but she now carried it with grace, a burden transformed into strength. Jacob, standing tall beside his sister Emily, radiated a quiet confidence, a young man shaped by hardship yet defined by his courage. That night, as speeches concluded and the crowd slowly dispersed under a canopy of stars, a new chapter quietly began. Jacob had accepted an invitation to teach art therapy workshops at the local community center, determined to share the healing power of creativity with others who carried invisible scars. Emily, inspired by her brother's resilience, had chosen a path in social work, eager to help children who faced the same fears she once knew. The Millers' home was filled with laughter again, soft, genuine, and healing. The once hollow spaces had been filled with memories of joy and connection, a reminder that life, despite its unpredictable cruelty, could still offer beauty and hope. Tom and Laura often sat together in the evenings, reflecting on how far they had come. They had learned that closure wasn't a destination, but a journey, a daily choice to embrace the light despite the lingering darkness. Jacob's journey was a beacon for many, but it also revealed the importance of community and vigilance. The town had implemented stronger safety measures and fostered an environment where every child's voice was heard and protected. Neighbor looked out for neighbor, and the shared commitment to safeguarding the future had created a legacy that extended beyond any single family. As the years rolled gently forward, the Miller family remained bound by an unbreakable thread of love and shared history. Their story was etched not only in the pages of newspapers or the frames of photographs, but in the hearts of those who had witnessed their courage. They had transformed tragedy into testimony and pain into purpose. In the quiet moments, when the world outside slowed and the night wrapped them in its calm embrace, the Millers found peace. The mask in the basement, the letters, the journal, and the countless memories were no longer sources of torment, but chapters in a story of resilience. And though scars remained, they were reminders of battles fought and won, of a love that refused to be extinguished. Jacob's voice, once silenced by fear, now echoed through halls and hearts alike, a call to hope and action. His life, though marked by loss, had become a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. And as the community gathered each year to remember and renew their vows to protect the innocent, the Miller family stood at the heart of it all, a living reminder that even the deepest wounds could heal and that new beginnings were always possible. The journey had been long and arduous, but in the end, it was love that prevailed, the love of parents, siblings, friends, and a community that refused to give up. Together, They had woven a tapestry of hope that would carry them through whatever tomorrow might bring. Thank you so much for staying with us through this heartfelt journey. Your time and attention mean the world, and we're truly grateful to share this story with such a thoughtful and caring community. If this story touched you, please consider subscribing to our channel to join us for more meaningful tales. Don't forget to like the video. It really helps us reach more people who need to hear these stories. We'd love to hear from you, so please leave a comment below sharing your thoughts or even your own experiences. Your voice matters, and together, we create a place where stories bring us closer. Thank you again for being here. We can't wait to connect with you in the next video.